In this video, you'll learn how to create an amazing homepage for your e-commerce business. This is episode 1 of a series in which we'll create an entire e-commerce store with admin panel for managing products, orders, and much more. Without further ado, let's build this amazing homepage. I already finished step number 1, and that was to create a design for an entire website. My idea for a store is to sell tech products, but principles we'll cover today can be applied to any niche. Step 2. Choose a technology. I decided to use Svelte because it's awesome. No worries if you haven't used it, neither have I. I'm assuming you have Node.js installed, but if you don't, go ahead and install it first. Then, let's initialize the project by running the command from Svelte docs. We'll be asked to select a template, and I'll select skeleton project. We'll add type checking with TypeScript syntax, and I'll add prettier for nice code formatting. Now we can open the project with VS Code. And let's install Node modules now. As a package manager, I will use pnpm. We won't be using npm because pnpm is much faster. To install pnpm, you should run this command. After you've done that, you will be able to install your Node modules with pnpm install. If you've done everything right, you can now start the application by running this command. Before I show you the app, I'll first replace the favorite icon with the logo I created for this store. Then I'll reference the new favorite icon inside app.html file. Let's also install Tailwind by reading the instructions from documentation. First thing that we need to do is to install Tailwind by running these two commands inside our terminal. Just make sure to use pnpm instead of npm to avoid any dependency problems. Then make sure to enable the use of post.css inside style blocks by adding these lines into Svelte config file. After that, we should tell Tailwind where to look for to find our template files. And I'll do that by adding this line inside Tailwind config file. The last thing we need to do is to add Tailwind directives into app.css file. I'll just go ahead and create app.css file and paste directives right there. Let's also not forget to create layout file and to import CSS file we just created. Now I'm going to extend default Tailwind theme with a couple of my own custom styles. I'll add custom font families, colors that I extracted from design files, font size, box shadow values, and custom screen breakpoint. To finish project setup, I'll visit Google's fonts website, choose the fonts I'm going to use for my e-commerce website, I'll select styles and just copy and paste import statements inside index.css file. I'll first wrap the entire application with a div that has our custom font family we've defined inside Tailwind config file. Then in our layout, I'll render a slot that just renders children. Now inside our homepage file, I'll add a Svelte head tag with information about a browser title and other meta information such as description. I'll also define responsive padding X style that I plan to reuse everywhere inside application. I will use that style on my homepage, and I'll also add padding bottom and gray background. Inside layout file, I'll render header and footer with basic text so that we can see if our layout actually works. Also, I forgot to remove this automatically generated content from Svelte. If we open the website in browser, we can see that header, homepage, and footer are being rendered nicely. We need a place to store all our components, and for that I'll create components folder, and there I'll add our first component called header. I'll add HTML header tag and a div inside it, and I'll style it accordingly by adding padding on horizontal and vertical axis. I'll add bottom border, set the display to flex, and make sure that content has space between it. Now I'll just go ahead and render our store logo and links on one side, and on the other side there will be a shopping cart button. Whenever I need to add icons on my website, I go to Figma, right-click the icon and just copy it as SVG. Then I usually create a designated folder where I will keep all my icons, and I will just create a file and paste the contents I just copied from Figma in there. With that done, I can now use the logo icon inside my header. I'll just repeat the same process for the shopping bag icon. I'll paste the copied SVG from Figma and import the icon in our header. Now to display header links, I will create a types folder in which we'll define custom types for our objects. I will define a header link type that has name string property, link string property, and an icon property that will be of type constructor of a typed Svelte component. Now with header link type defined, we can create an array of header links that have all of these properties. First header link will be for homepage, and the second will be for products page. Now if we try to import header link, we will get an error that we must use import type statement. So I'll go ahead and use it. But even now we will see an error that we can use import type statement only in TypeScript files. So to fix this, I'll just go ahead and add language as TypeScript to our script tag. Now that that's working, we need to define home icon and product icon. I already found appropriate icons for Material Design Figma plugin, and I'll just go ahead and create those files and paste appropriate SVGs inside of them. Now I'll go ahead and import them inside our header, and as you can see, we will not have any more errors. We can now iterate through our links with the help of each statement, and for each header link I will render a span element with link name property as a content and with the cursor pointer style. Now that's all great, but we need to render our header we just made inside our layout file. Let's also add gap and spacing between our store logo and header links we just rendered. That's header 101 for you. You can now copy and paste this code in every future project. Let's finish up layout by creating a footer component. I'm going to add a base div element with the dark background, white text, display flex, padding X, top and bottom padding, and some gap between the objects. Sorry about that. I'll create another flex column container in which I'll place white logo component and text to inform everyone that stealing websites is illegal. Now let's go ahead and create white logo component we'll use in footer, paste SVG inside it, and let's import it in our footer. Footer contains sections and links, so let's add some types for that. First, I'll create footer section type. Each footer section contains title and array of links. Each footer link contains a name and link to navigate to. Now let's add some static data until our backend is ready. I'll create footer sections file where I'll add some mock data. Our first footer section is going to highlight different products that we sell. So that can be computers, audio and headphones, TVs, home appliances, and sports and travel. Second section is for discounts, and the third one is about section. Now let's iterate through each footer section, and for each one add a flex column container with title on the top. Let's not forget to add some styling to our title, and below it let's render another flex column container in which we'll render our links for that footer section. Each link should be placed inside hyperlink element so that we can route to the appropriate page later. Let's see our footer inside the browser, and that's footer 101 for you. Now let's build this bad boy.
But Wiz, how are we going to do it?
Well, let's start simple. First things first, let's add hero section component into our page. Create the component and make sure to import it. Then let's add h1 element for SEO, and inside it let's add elevate your text and break the line. Then for styling, let's add padding top, flex column layout. Make sure to size the text based on viewport width, add leading none, blue color, uppercase everything, and add custom font family and align items to the start. And now we should have something like this. Below that text, let's add a container with relative position, flex row layout, and a slightly smaller font size. First element should be tech text, then add div that sole purpose is going to be spacing. Next, let's add image element for the laptop with alternative text for SEO and add game text after it. Now create images folder and add PNG image of a laptop with rocket inside of it. Make sure to reference that image in image element and add absolute position to it with left set to 7 and top to -11 viewport width. Let's also set width to the image, and you'll notice that the text and image now size according to viewport width. Next, I'll wrap our game span element in a container with flex column layout. The reason I'm doing this is because we want to add hero call to action section below it that will follow the position of game text element. Now it would be good if we had reusable button components. I'll add a button element with slot for text, and let's add some basic styling. I want to make sure that text is centered inside the button, that button has a rounded border, and that font is appropriate. With this syntax, we can add dynamic styles to this button by passing a d-class variable with styles from our parent components. Let's also export variable named variant and enable two variants of our button components. These two variants are going to be primary and secondary button. Now, based on that variable, if the value is equal to primary, we're going to render a blue background button with white text, and if it's secondary, we're going to render a transparent button with blue border and blue text. Let's finish this component by exporting onClick event handler, and just make sure to add onClick callback to your button element. Now let's go back to hero section component and replace button element with our custom button component. We're going to use secondary button variant with dynamic class of with full. Let's also add another component called arrow icon, paste the SVG inside the component and render it after Explore Laptop's text. And now we should have something like this. Inside images folder, let's add parts of the rocket image that we're going to use to clip to the game and tag texts. Then inside Tailwind config file, let's add a background image properties with respective URLs to the images folder where we place them. Now let's clip the first background to tag text and add background cover, background clip and text transparent classes, and let's clip the second background to game text. As you can see, tag and game texts have clipped backgrounds. And the hero section is now done. To display products, we'll use Carousel, and for that we can utilize Svelte's Splide library. The first step is to go ahead and install it with pnpm install command. Once that is done, I'll go ahead and create discounted products component and render it below hero section. Then I'll import and render a Splide component from Splide library inside discounted products component. Then I'll add margin top, set has track to false, and for the options I'll add type loop, set gap to 30 pixels, set per page to 4 and per move to 1. Next I'll render Splide track and iterate through the list of discounted products which we don't have for now. Then inside types folder, I'll create a custom product type with name, category, discount, price, rating and image attributes. After that, I'll create mock product list and import that list inside discounted products component. For now, I'll just render name of the product inside the carousel. Let's also create a div with Splide arrows class that will be a wrapper for arrow buttons that we'll use to move the carousel. For the icons, we'll use custom carousel icon that we will import. Make sure to add these classes on each carousel icon button. Let's quickly create carousel icon component, paste the SVG inside it and import it inside discounted products component. Very important step is to import Splide CSS file inside our homepage file. Let's see what we have so far. We can see that the carousel is working, but let's make it pretty. Let's create a product card component and for each product in the list, let's render that component and pass in the product we want to display. Inside the component, make sure to export product variable. I'll create an outer div with 100% height style, some padding, display set to flex, medium shadow, white background, rounded corners and justify between style. Then I'll add another div and inside it I'll add a wrapper for the image. Let's make sure that the div has square aspect ratio, rounded borders and overflow set to hidden. Now let's add the image tag with dynamic source and add some basic alt text. Also stylize the image so that it has full width and height and add object cover style to it. Right below the image, let's add a button element in which we'll render product name and let's stylize it by making sure that the text does not break. This is very important because product names may have different lengths. Then below the image and product name, let's add another button and inside it render product category and add similar styling. Now we need to render product price and rating in the same row. Inside we can add a star icon which we will add later and let's display product rating. Make sure to add flex row layouts where necessary and align items appropriately. Because products in the list will always have a discount, let's render price text with line through style and let's also add gold and yellow color to the rating text. It's time to add star icon component and paste the SVG from design file. Below old price and rating, let's add a discounted price with semi-bold font weight and a red color. Finally, let's add to cart button below the discounted price. Make sure to use primary button variant with full width. And now discounted products look much better. But the arrows are not good because they are positioned inside the carousel. You should note that every library assigns classes and predefined styles to their components, and we can use those classes to override predefined styles. Let's create styles folder and create carousel CSS file inside it. Now we can override Splide track padding with our own values of 20 pixels. Let's add transparent background to Splide arrow class and make sure that the left arrow has left property with -1 rem and that the right arrow has right property with -1 rem value. Let's import this file inside homepage file. We can see that the arrows are moved, but we can move them a bit more, so I'll increase the values from -1 to -2 rem, and that's it. You know the drill, create feature section component and import it inside homepage file. Then inside feature section component, add div wrapper with margin top, flex row layout, height of 70 viewport height and gap between the elements. First child div should take 2/3 of available width, have rounded corners, full height, overflow hidden, cursor pointer and relative position. Inside of it we will place image of a laptop that will lure customers to the laptop section of the website. Then let's add span element with text about 50% discount, and let's add a secondary button with absolute position with bottom 5 left set to 1/2. Let's translate it on x-axis by 1/2 of its own width. Let's add border white, text white and width of 1/3. We should also make call to action text white in color, and we should make sure it's positioned correctly relative to the outer container. So far we have first section in the feature section. Now let's add the remaining parts. First create another container with flex column layout, set gap to 5, width to 1/3 and set full height. Then inside it we need 3 containers for each section. First we'll add a section for smartwatches, and inside it image of a smartwatch with text smartwatch collections. Then I'll add another section with headphone image with high quality headphones text. And finally I'll go ahead and add a section for keyboards. Now we should have something like this. But we can make this whole area much better if we add hover animations. Inside app CSS file let's add layer components directive, and inside it let's add a class called scaled image. This class will apply transition style with duration of 300 milliseconds, in and out easing, and scale of 110 on hover. Now we can add scale image class on our feature section images, and we can do the same on product cart image. As we can see, when we hover over the images, they scale up, giving this website a nice touch. E-commerce website isn't legit if you can't order from your phone, so let's make it mobile friendly. If you're not familiar how responsiveness works, we can use TailwindCSS classes to control what should be rendered on different screen sizes. So if we, for example, add the LG prefix to whatever Tailwind class, then that means that only on large screens, which is 1024 pixels, this style will be applied, and below 1024 pixels it will not. So now that we know that, let's hide a bunch of stuff. Let's start with header. We want to display header links only on medium screens and above, and the same goes for shopping bag icon. Now let's add a hamburger menu icon on screens smaller than medium. Let me just quickly paste the SVG and import the icon back into the component. Now as you can see, if we make the screen smaller, you'll see that the links are hidden and that shopping bag is replaced with the menu icon. We can make footer mobile friendly easily. I'll make the gaps much smaller, and I'll change flex direction to column on smaller screens. Let's check what we have so far. But we should move copyright text below footer sections on small screens. To do that, I'll hide this copyright text on small screens and add the same text below footer sections and display it on larger screens only. And footer is now responsive. Now let's get back to header and make a new header drawer component. I'll go ahead and add isMenuOpened and header links variables as input to this component. Now I want to add a backdrop component that will have black transparent background with opacity initially set to 0. Then I'll add another div that will have flex column display, blue text with absolute position, with 1/3 value for width, full height, top and right set to 0 and white background. I'll also set white space to no wrap, and I'll add some padding. Now in this container I will iterate through header links and render each one inside a button. Every button will have name for the link, and I'll dynamically render icon for that link. Now let's render header drawer component inside header component, and let's pass in links and isMenuOpened flag. We should initialize isMenuOpened flag and define open function. We can call this function when user clicks on the menu icon. Let's not forget to increase set index for menu icon button. Now let's go ahead and refactor header drawer component by adding another wrapper div with fixed position that's stretched across the screen. It will have set index set to 50, invisible class, or if the menu is opened, with visible class. Now we should place the content of the drawer inside that div and also extract the drawer content from the backdrop div. We can also set the opacity to 100 if the menu is opened. So now let's see what will happen when we click the menu icon. We can make backdrop element a button element and add onClick event that calls close function. Close function should dispatch close event to parent header component. In order for this to work, we must declare dispatch with create event dispatcher function from Svelte. Now in header component, add callback for close event that will close the menu. Clicking on backdrop will now close the menu. Let's also hide the drawer on medium and above screens. To improve this, we can also modify the width of the drawer content based on the screen size, and we can add scale animation that's originating from the right. To finish off header, we can hide the logo text on extra small screen sizes so that people can order from our store on foldable phones. Now let's make hero section responsive. I will center hero text on extra small screens and I'll modify the width and gap of call to action text. We can also change position of this call to action section on extra small devices by duplicating it and pasting it here. This way we will avoid this text following game text. This call to action section should also have somewhat different styles on extra small screen sizes. Let's see what happens now when we reduce the screen size. It's much better. To make carousel responsive, we can utilize their own options and add breakpoints. I will change padding and per page values on different screens. I will also hide arrows on mobile devices. Now as you can see, it's much better, but we can stylize pagination as it's barely seen on mobile devices. To do that, I'll override Splide pagination class with bottom set to -0.5 rem, and I'll also change backgrounds for page dots. You can now clearly see pagination dots. And finally, feature section. First, I'll add flex column layout on smaller screens. Then I'll also add 48 height value for every image on smaller screen. For the laptop image, I'll align the text a little differently on mobile devices, and I will hide the call to action button. Let's do the same for other sections and just modify the values for the text positions. Make sure to position the text by testing what works best on smaller screen sizes. And this is the final mobile website view. It looks clean and professional in my opinion. Hey guys, I hope you are learning something with these tutorials, and if so, please consider clicking that like button to support the channel. I want to help you become a better full stack developer, so stay tuned as more great content is coming. See ya!